Hello guys, Mr. Cooney here, and I am here to make our way, adjust my picture a little bit here, through book 9. I'm going to divide this into two videos. So this is book 9A, we'll call it, and I'll label that video. If you recall, we finished off the previous book with Calypso finally letting Odysseus go, helping him. He's at sea for days, and he ends up landing on this island, Scheria, which is where he's supposed to be. And he's barely alive, right? So New Coasts in Poseidon's Son is the name of this section, and it has excerpts from a few books. Okay, so it's going to start off with some kind of introductory material where he is at a place where he washed up at the previous section that we read. And from there, he's going to start retelling how he got there, which is going to trace all the way back to before he was at Calypso's, if you look back at your timeline, and all the things that led him to this point. When he eventually catches up with himself in real time, then the story will move on in medias res. Okay? And I'm repeating that a lot, beating a dead horse, but it is kind of confusing. And we're remote. I don't know how much you guys are getting it. So, but anyway, let me zoom in here for a good view. And here we go. So book 9, New Coasts in Poseidon's Son. So in books 6 through 8, Odysseus is welcomed by King Alcinous, who gives a banquet in his honor. And the night before, the king begs Odysseus to tell who he is. He doesn't even realize who he is and what has happened to him. So in books 9 through 12, Odysseus relates to his king his adventures. And so this is kind of Odysseus revealing himself. I am he, right? I am Laertes' son. What shall I say first? What shall I keep until the end? The gods have tried me in 1,000 ways, but first my name, let that be known to you. If I pull away from pitiless death, friendship will bind us, though my land lies far. I am Laertes' son, Odysseus. Now at this point, everybody at King Alcinous' place will be like, oh my God, the famous Odysseus, who was lost at sea after fighting in the Trojan War. I can't believe he's there. So he continues on, Odysseus still speaking, right? Men hold me formidable for guile and peace and war. This fame has gone abroad to the sky's rim. My home is on the peaked sea mark of Ithaca, under Mount Neon's wind-blown robe of leaves, in sight of other islands, Dulichium, same wooded Zacynthus, Ithaca being the most lofty in that coastal sea, and northwest, while the rest lies east and south. A rocky isle, but good for a boy's training. I shall not see a place on earth more dear, though I have been detained long by Calypso, loveliest among goddesses, who held me in her smooth caves to be her heart's delight, as Circe of Aea, the enchantress, desired me and detained me in her hall. Odysseus has apparently been held hostage by more than one beautiful temptress, sorceress. But in my heart, I never gave consent. Where shall a man find sweetness to surpass his own home and his parents? In far lands he shall not, though he find a house of gold. So he's saying, as this question asks over here, that what he values most highly is home. So the big question is, what does Odysseus value most highly? Is it being out there and having these adventures and being a soldier, a hero? Or is it actually being at home and being a husband and a father? And we'll read on to find out. Next page. Continuing, what of my sailing then from Troy? Remember, this is still Odysseus starting to retell his stuff to King Alcinous in his court. What of those years of rough adventure weathered under Zeus? Paraphrased part, Odysseus explains that soon after leaving Troy, he and his crew landed near Ismarus, the city of the Cyclones. The Cyclones were allies of the Trojans and therefore enemies of Odysseus. Odysseus and his crew raid the Cyclones, robbing and killing them until the Cyclonian army kills 72 of Odysseus's men and drives the rest out to sea. Delayed by a storm of 2 days, Odysseus and his remaining companions then continued on their journey. So what happened there was they got a little greedy, right? We defeated Troy, we can do anything. Let's go pick on the Cyclones, who are allies of Troy, right? But they didn't really have any beef with. And they go attack them, but with their reduced numbers, they get attacked back. And he loses 72 of his men. So he's already losing his men to some bad decisions, right? When is enough enough? All right, next section, the Lotus Eaters. Now, quotes, right? Because Odysseus is continuing to retell his own story. You're going to see those quotes at the beginning of each section kind of denoting that. I have made it safely home that time. I might have made it safely home that time. But as I came around Malea, the current took me out to sea, and from the north, a fresh gale drove me on, past Cythera, 9 days, and when he says I, he means I and the rest of his crew. I drifted on the teeming sea before dangerous high winds. Upon the 10th day, we came upon the coastline of the lotus eaters who live upon that flower, the lotus flower. We landed there to take on water. All ships' companies mustered alongside for the midday meal. Then I sent out 2 picked men and a runner to learn what race of men that land sustained. They fell in soon enough with the lotus eaters, who showed no will to do us harm, only offered the sweet lotus to our friends. But those who ate this honeyed plant, the lotus, never cared to report nor to return. They longed to stay forever, browsing on that native bloom, forgetful of their homeland. I drove them, all 3 wailing, to the ships, tied them down under the rowing benches, and called the rest. All hands aboard, come clear the beach, and no one taste the lotus, or you lose your hope of home. Filing in their places by the rowlocks, the oarsmen dipped their long oars in the surf, and we moved again in our seafaring. So what's going on with this lotus plant? So it's a plant, and there's a bunch of people being real mellow and just hanging out and say, eat, have some of this. And then when they do, they don't really care about what's important anymore. They just want to hang out and relax. Kind of sounds like some sort of recreational drug, doesn't it? Okay, so they're not being real specific about what it is. They're calling it lotus, which doesn't really make sense. Poppy flower, lotus, maybe something similar to that. A little bit of a lesson in there, right? In the story, maybe for like younger people of, Greek society, of shortcuts and things that make you comfortable. So they recover from that. Odysseus, despite his sometimes overzealous curiosity, convinces them to leave, not taste it anymore, and they get going. Okay, long adventure coming up here, the Cyclops. The next land, we found the Cyclopes, that's plural for Cyclops. Giants, louts, without a law to bless them. And a Cyclops, you probably know, legendary creature, is like a large giant, human-like sort of giant, but with one big eye in the center. In ignorance, leaving the fruitage of the earth and mystery to the immortal gods, they, the Cyclopes, so it's describing the Cyclopes society here. Move myself out of the way. Nor sow by hand, nor till the ground, though grain, wild wheat, and barley grows untended, and wine grapes and clusters ripen in the heavens' rain. Cyclopes have no muster and no meeting, no consultation in the old tribal ways, but each one dwells in his own mountain cave, dealing out rough justice to wife and child, indifferent to what the others do. Okay, so they don't have a sense of community. They are brutal with each other and violent, don't have a society. So probably meant as a contrast to the civilized ways of life of the Greeks in the mind of the storyteller, right? Okay, paraphrase section. Across the bay from the land of the Cyclopes was a lush, deserted island. Odysseus and his crew landed on the island in a dense fog and spent days feasting on wine and wild goats and observing the mainland where the other Cyclopes lived. On the 3rd day, Odysseus and his company of men set out to learn if the Cyclopes were friends or foes. It's kind of a famous Homeric simile here that appears all through this. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose. Okay, what is that? Came in the east. I called my men together and made a speech to them. Okay, well that's a Homeric simile for a sunrise, right? Personifying the dawn, the sun coming up. Okay, moving on. Old shipmates, friends, this is Odysseus speaking to his crew. The rest of you stand by. I'll make the crossing in my own ship with my own company and find out what the mainland natives are. For they may be wild savages and lawless, or hospitable and God-fearing men. As I went aboard and gave the word to cast off by the stern, my oarsmen followed, filling into the benches by the rowlocks, and all in line dipped oars in the great sea. As we rowed on and near to the mainland, at one end of the bay, we saw a cavern yawning above the water, screened with laurel, and many rams and goats about the place inside a sheepfold, made from slabs of stone, earth-fast, between tall trunks and pine and rugged towering oak trees. A prodigious man, huge man, what seems to be a man, slept in his cave alone and took his flocks to graze afield. We're watching all this, right? Remote from all companions, knowing none but savage ways, a brute so huge he seemed no man at all of those who eat good wheaten bread, but he seemed rather a shaggy mountain reared in solitude. We beached there, and I told the crew, going to the next page, told the crew to stand by and keep watch over the ship. As for myself, I took my 12 best fighters and went ahead. I had a goat skin full of that sweet liquor that Euanthes' son, Marin, had given me. He kept Apollo's holy grove at Ismarus. For kindness we showed him there, showed his wife and child, gave 7 shining golden talents perfectly formed, a solid silverwood wine bowl, and then this liquor. 12 two-handled jars of brandy, pure and fiery. Not a slave in Marin's household knew this drink. Only he, his wife, and the storeroom mistress knew. And they would pour 1 cupful, ruby-colored, honey-smooth, and 20 more of water. But still, the sweet scent hovered like a fume over the wine bowl. No man turned away when cups of this came around. So he's trying to emphasize they had this really awesome drink with them. A wineskin full I brought along, and victuals in a bag. Victuals be a word for food. For in my bones I knew some towering brute would be upon us soon, all outward power, a wild man, ignorant of civility. We climbed then briskly to the cave, but Cyclops had gone afield to pasture his fat sheep, so we looked round at everything inside, a drying rack that sagged with cheeses, pens crowded with lambs and kids are baby sheep, each in its class, firstlings apart from middlings, and the dewdrops are newborn lambkins, penned apart from both, and vessels full of whey were brimming there, bowls of earthenware, and pails for milking. Okay, so basically a bunch of sheep and the stuff that you do to make sort of dairy products from sheep milk, right? Lamb milk. My men came pressing around me, pleading, Odysseus, why not take these cheeses, get them stowed, come back, throw open all the pens, and make a run for it. We'll drive the kids and lambs aboard. We can put out again on good salt water, right? If we're going to take the stuff, let's take the stuff and get out of here before something bad happens to us. Okay, Odysseus is still telling his own story, narrating, how sound that was, yet I refused. I wished to see the caveman, what he had to offer. No pretty sight, it turned out, for my friends. A little bit of foreshadowing there. Sounds like he's going to lose some more guys, right? Next page. We lit a fire, burnt an offering, took some cheese to eat, and then sat in silence around the embers waiting. When he came, he had a load of dry boughs on his shoulder to stoke his fire at supper time. So they're kind of hiding and watching. He dumped it with a great crash into that hollow cave, and we scattered fast to the far wall. Then over the broad cavern floor, he ushered the ewes he meant to milk. He left his rams and he-goats in the yard outside and swung high overhead a slab of solid rock to close the cave. 24 four-wheeled wagons with heaving wagon teams could not have stirred the tonnage of rock from where he wedged it over the door sill. So there's a huge, big rock that blocks the doorway, and now they're in there. Next, he took a seat and milked his bleeding ewes. A practice job he made of it, giving each ewe her suckling, thickened his milk into curds and whey, sieved out the curds to drip into withy baskets, and poured the whey to stand in bowls until he drank it for his supper. When all these chores were done, he poked the fire, heaping on brushwood, and in the glare, he saw us. Strangers, he said, who are you and where are you from? What brings you here by seaways of fair traffic? Or are you wandering rogues, thieves, who cast your lives like dice and ravage other folk by sea? We felt a pressure on our hearts, Odysseus continues narrating, right? In dread of that deep rumble and that mighty man. But all the same, I spoke up in reply. We are from Troy, Achaeans, Greeks, blown off course by shifting gales to the great South Sea. Homeward bound, but taking routes and ways so uncommon, so the will of Zeus would have it. We served under Agamemnon, son of Atreus. The whole world knows what city we laid waste, what armies he destroyed, Troy, right? It was our luck to come here. Here we stand, beholden for your help or any gifts you might give, as custom is to honor strangers. We would entreat you, great sir, have a care for the god's courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest. So he's reminding him, supposedly, even though they're about to steal all the stuff, that it's custom to give polite guests gifts, right? Next page. He answered this from his brute chest, unmoved. You are a ninny, or else you come from the other end of nowhere telling me, mind the gods. We Cyclopes care not a whistle for your thundering Zeus, or all the gods in bliss. We have more force by far. I would not let you go for fear of Zeus, you or your friends, unless I had a whim to. Tell me, where is it now? Where'd you leave your ship? Around the point? Down the shore, I wonder? Odysseus narrates. He thought he'd find out, but I saw through this and I answered with a ready lie. My ship, Poseidon, Lord, who sets the earth a tremble, broke it on the rocks at your land's end. A wind from seaward served him there, drove us there. We are survivors, these good men and I. Now we know that's a lie, right? He just doesn't want him to find the ship. Neither reply nor pity came from him, but in one stride he clutched at my companions and caught two in his hands like squirming puppies to beat their brains out, spattering on the floor. Then he dismembered them and made his meal, gaping and crunching like a mountain lion, everything, innards, flesh, marrow, bones. We cried aloud, lifting our hands to Zeus, powerless, looking at this, appalled. But the Cyclops went on filling his belly with man flesh and great gulps of whey. And he lay down like a mast among his sheep. My heart beat high at the chance of action, and drawing the sharp sword from my hip, I went along his flank to stab him where the midriff holds the liver. I touched the spot when sudden fear stayed me. If I killed him, we perished there as well, for we could never move the ponderous doorway slab aside. So we were left to groan and wait for morning. This is not a good situation. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose, there's that device again, lit up the world, the Cyclops built a fire, milked his handsome ewes, all in good order. Next page. Putting the sucklings to the mothers. Then, his chores being all dispatched, he caught another brace of men to make his breakfast and whisked away with a great door slab to let sheep go through. But he reset the stone as one would cap a quiver. There was a din of whistling as the Cyclops rounded his flock to higher ground, and then stillness. Now I pondered how to hurt him worst. But if Athena granted me what I prayed for, here are the means I thought would serve my turn. A club or staff lay there along the fold, an olive tree, felled green and left to season for Cyclope's hand. And it was like a mast, a lugger of 20 oars, broad in the beam, a deep seagoing craft might carry. So long around it seems. Now I chopped out a 6-foot section of this pole and set it down before my men, who scraped it. And when they had it smooth, I hewed again to make a stake with the pointed end. I held this in the fire's heart and turned it, toughening it, and then hid it well back in the cavern on one of the dung piles in profusion there. What are they going to do with this? Now came the time to toss for it. Who ventured along with me? Whose hand could bear to thrust and grind that spike in Cyclops's eye when mild sleep had mastered him? As luck would have it, the men I would have chose won the toss. 4 strong men, and I made 5 as captain. And I'm going to pause there into part A. So they've got sort of a strategy going here. If they blind him, then maybe they can get out somehow, right? Because he won't be able to see them. At least he can't grab any more of them. It's kind of unclear. But all right, end of book 9, part A.